What's up, Star Wars fans? Today I want to talk about Moff Gideon's sinister plans for the Mandalorian Din Djarin. There was just so much revealed in Chapter 23 that even the dedicated Star Wars fandom is having a hard time processing all of it. But one thing that came across really clear from the Moff is that when he's giving his speech at the end after he's ambushed the Mandalorians, is that this guy is absolutely obsessed with Mandalorians. He has this crazy hidden base on Mandalore. Of course, we saw his enhanced Mandalorian armor, and instead of stormtroopers, his guards look very much like the Imperial super commandos from Star Wars Rebels. But not only is he obsessed with Mandalorian culture, he's obsessed with wiping out the Mandalorians and replacing them. But with these sinister plans comes a big question: who exactly is Moff Gideon going to replace the Mandalorians with? And while it was easy to miss because there was so much thrown at us in Chapter 23, but I believe Moff Gideon clearly tells us in the episode. Gideon states in his speech near the end that every society has something to offer: the cloners, the Jedi, and even the Mandalorians. He continues by saying by aggregating the best of each, he will create an army that will bring order to the galaxy. And at first, I thought he was just talking about elements of the culture of the clones, the Jedi, and the Mandalorians, what made them successful, but no, I think his plans are much more sinister. Remember, he says he's going to create an army to replace the Mandalorians, and we know going all the way back to Season 1 that the reason that the Moff was after little Grogu was for his DNA. We also saw at the beginning of this episode, as well as back in Season 2, that Gideon has clearly been working on a cloning project. Now, most of us thought that Gideon was maybe trying to bring back the Emperor at this point, or that he was trying to create Snoke, very much tying the Mandalorian to the sequel trilogy. But Chapter 23 totally destroys those theories. In the Shadow Council meeting, Gideon comes across as somebody that wants power for himself. He does not want to bring back the Emperor, he wants to be the Emperor himself. As he states as much in his speech near the end, his army will bring order to the galaxy. And if we look back at what Dr. Pershing was telling us about cloning earlier in the season, it looks like Gideon's clones aren't simply going to use a genetic template like Jango Fett. They're going to be able to use different genetic templates, such as genetics from both Jedi and Mandalorians. And this is where things really start to get crazy. We know that the Moff has a genetic sample of little Grogu, and we also know that in Chapter 23, Din Djarin was not killed. He was actually captured. So what if the Moff actually plans to make a Mandalorian army inspired by the genetics of little Grogu and one of the greatest Mandalorian warriors ever, Din Djarin? I mean, why else would Moff Gideon want Din Djarin captured? I'm sure it's not just because he wants to talk to him or torture him. No, Gideon's sinister plans for Din Djarin is that he's going to take his genetics and use them as part of the template for his new clone army, along with, of course, the genetics from little Grogu and his force sensitivity. Now, don't get me wrong here, I don't believe these clone warriors are going to be able to manipulate the force like the Jedi, but with the combined genetics of little Grogu and Mando, they will be somewhat in tune with the force and therefore have heightened senses, very much like Chirrut Imwe from Rogue One, making them superior fighters to any other clone army we've ever seen. Certainly, with an army like that, Moff Gideon could bring order to the galaxy. But hey, Star Wars fans, what do you think about my crazy speculation? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I'm Mike, and remember, the Force will be with you always.